You never really know what you're gonna get when you watch an anime. Sometimes you get a really deep, emotional story. Sometimes you get an epic, sprawling tale. And sometimes you just get something light but enjoyable in its uniqueness, and that's how I feel about Stop Hibari-Kun. Published from 1981 to 1983, this off-the-walls rom-com has a little bit of everything: sports, drama, yakuza, 80s pop charm, and at the center of it all, a main character who is definitely pushing the boundaries of shonen at the time and manages to be relatable to many, even today. In this video, we're going to look at how Hisashi Eguchi, the man behind it all, got started, some highlights of the series itself, and the legacies both the series and its creator left behind. Also, just a disclaimer, I'm not part of the LGBT community myself, so I can't personally speak on behalf of any group. I've tried to do my best with this video, but as always, if you had a different opinion regarding a series, comments about it would really be appreciated. Trying to get a better perspective about all of this. With that out of the way, let's see how Eguchi got into manga. Hisashi Eguchi was born on March 29th, 1956 in the city of Minamata. As a young boy, what first got him drawing was seeing Astro Boy on television. At the age of 4, he got his first copy of the Astro Boy manga, later being influenced by Ultraman and Ultra 7. Something interesting to note is that in an interview with Sex magazine, Eguchi said his drawings in grade school don't feature any girls, even though that's what he'd become most known for, and only started drawing girls when he decided to get into being a professional mangaka. This led him to take influences from popular shojo of the time, and through this we can see the influences for some of the more notable elements of Stop Hibari-Kun. Shojo in the 70s was really breaking new ground when it came to mainstream representation of LGBT characters with stories like The Rose of Versailles, The Heart of Thomas, and Claudine. Of course, they weren't without flaws, notably often ending tragically, but compared to what the average shonen was doing at the time, it was certainly pushing the envelope. After publishing his first serial, Suzume Pirates, in Shonen Jump from 1977 to 1980, Eguchi wanted to try something different and looked to parody the popular rom-coms of the day, with the twist being that the main character was actually a cross-dressing boy. And so, the first chapter of Stop Hibari-Kun was published on October 19, 1981, with its popularity leading to an anime a couple years later in 1983 by Toei Animation airing on Fuji TV. Let's see how it all came together. There's a lot of elements to Stop Hibari-Kun, but the easiest place to start off with is the story itself. The series follows Kosaku Sakamoto, a high schooler who was encouraged by his dying mom after his dad had previously passed to live with her old friend Ibari Rosa. After feeling uneasy upon finding out that the Rosa family was actually a Yakuza syndicate, meeting the Rosa children puts him at ease, especially since they're all girls. Or at least they seem to be all girls, as Ibari and the rest of the family states that the first member he met, Ibari, is actually a guy, which shocks him since he got a crush at first sight. And so the series covers misadventures of Hibari, Kosaku, the Rosa family, and all their antics in high school, such as dealing with Makoto Shina, a cool guy with a perm who dislikes Kosaku for being liked by Hibari. A running theme is the kind-hearted Kosaku trying to wrestle with his feelings for Hibari, but also trying to appear normal, which is reflected in an early arc where Kosaku, in an attempt to both distance himself from Hibari and also appear more masculine, deciding to join the boxing club. Because I guess every good manga has a boxing arc at some point, maybe I should give it a shot sometime. It's nice to see him mellow out with Makoto, but then this turns into another love square, Rie Kawai joining as the club's manager, with them really exploring this dynamic when they all go on a training camp retreat. Some of the story beats are pretty stock, like how in chapter 20 we're introduced to Joe Notori, the captain of the girls' volleyball team who tries to get Hibari to join the team, and even though she's better than the captain herself, doesn't want to join. Tough volleyball girls are nothing new in manga by this time, heck, there are countless examples. But what makes her a bit more interesting is not only seeing her family, with her mother and brothers having this flamboyant, masculine-esque look, but even herself having a bit of a crush on Hibari. Stop Hibari-Kun is full of these exaggerated portrayals of people, while some of them haven't really aged well at all, and I mean really. I appreciate how they're not beat down upon. Sure, many of the characters in the story think they're strange, but the whole series has this let's get weird energy. Kinda like Urusuyatsu, but definitely taken to more of an extreme when it comes to pushing the boundaries of the day. At the core of this is the main girl herself, Hibari. Hibari's gender identity is definitely the most striking element to most when they think of the series, so let's explore it. In her everyday life, especially at school, she's regarded as a girl, and there's honestly no reason not to. What's nice about the series is that while obscenely, Hibari's way of expressing herself is some sort of joke, in fact it may be how it's able to be published in a mainstream magazine like Shonen Jump. It's never really treated as one of the series. Hibari's father and other members of the family who look down upon her for the way she acts are pretty much always depicted her as being wrong for doing so, as well as her female classmates who do so, because they want to undermine her since she's stealing their popularity. But besides dealing with those few who try to expose her, Hibari's life honestly seems pretty great. No one else even questions her, and even some of her sisters begrudgingly help her, such as taking her place for a medical checkup. I think this is one of the key elements that made the series stand out at the time, not only just from shonen but even from the shojo dealing with similar sorts of characters. Hibari's story isn't tragic at all. While it might be a bit too wish fulfillment for some people, I think having stories of non-heteronormative characters that don't constantly deal with struggles and end positively is important for helping actual people who don't fit into these categories to find someone to relate to. Hibari is a strong character who doesn't let others control her, definitely taking after her Yakuza family, so it's no surprise she became an icon in herself. Something I feel it's often overlooked about all of this is the fact that people often boil Hibari's character down to simply being a transgender woman, but I don't entirely get that impression reading the manga. Unlike say Ryunosuke from Urusei, Hibari seems to not really care about labels as strongly unless she's being forced into one. While I've been using feminine pronouns since that's what most characters in the story use, Eguchi frequently uses masculine pronouns to refer to her, so while she generally conducts herself as a woman and prefers to be seen as one, it's something worth considering. Stop Hibari-Kun's style is a unique combination of styles. On one hand, it's pretty clear that Eguchi's style at the time was somewhat influenced by a fellow Jump mangaka, Akira Toriyama, with his characters bearing a resemblance to the cast of Dr. Slump. However, another influence you might not pick up on so easily through the pages of the manga itself was American pop art. Eguchi himself cites early Roy Lichtenstein and Andy Warhol as some of his influences. While this has become much more refined in his later advertising work, you can still see it prominently in many of the chapters' covers, and even with the way Hibari's eyes are drawn throughout the series. The anime further complements this with a rocking soundtrack that feels retro, not only in the sense that it's an 80s series, but also how many of the songs have an early rock feel, creating an interesting mix that's a lot of fun to listen to. Anyways, the series kinda jumps around a lot, but since it's a gag manga at its core, I don't think this seriously hurts the storytelling potential. Something I would quickly notice when reading the manga is Eguchi's frequent meta pages, starting with the sketch corner page at the end of the chapters, which I'm pretty sure were added for the tankos, but even getting into some of the main pages themselves beginning in chapter 9. It's definitely a very unique style of writing, since even though it's really just a bunch of random stuff from his life, it's not often that you see a mangaka casually talking about what music they like or how they got a buzz cut. This is much less frequent in the anime, and even though that's the version of the story the majority of people are familiar with, Eguchi himself says he wasn't satisfied with the anime. Admittedly, it does feel a little rough around the edges. Takase Hisaoka did a decent job with the series direction, even if it's pretty obvious that Eguchi's pop art-esque designs aren't the easiest to animate fluidly, which is something he mentioned. Also, the budget, it's not the highest. Totally wasn't the greatest studio at the time, so you can definitely see how other anime from like Perot just look better. In the second Tanker volume, he includes these rough 4-panel vulgar strips about the life of manga, and while they're fine, nothing egregious, they're definitely a strange inclusion. One of the most unique elements that you see often in the series is the white alligator. While in the story it's just something Hibari sees when he's got heart issues, Eguchi explains in one of his meta pages in a way that makes it seem like a personification of the writer's block. Evidently the white alligator got the better of him, since his particular style of storyboarding and quality standards, including never using whiteout, caused him to fall behind to take frequent week breaks, with the editor of Jump at the time, Shigeo Nishimura, not letting him publish the chapters bi-weekly. Eguchi in effect abandoned the series, leaving the anime on life support and it getting the axe shortly afterwards. By the way, the very last chapter, which Eguchi finished decades later for an omnibus collection, includes Gejikuro Taiga, a trans man, so it's interesting to speculate how the series could have continued if Eguchi was allowed to publish bi-weekly like he wanted to. Eguchi himself found success after Stop Hibari-Kun, not only working various supporting roles in the anime industry and writing shorter manga, but also working on other small projects, such as being the first editor-in-chief of Comic Q, a magazine dedicated to one-shots by established mangaka. However, Eguchi is probably most known these days for his work as an illustrator, as his pop art style has made him highly sought after in advertising and cover work right up until the present day, doing work for Jenny's Japan, Xanax, a hair product unrelated to the drug, Dental Core i5 processor, and the covers of every issue of Real Wine Guide. It's hard to wrap all of this up, so I'll talk about an amazing interview done by Archipel that'll be in the description. In Eguchi, I see a man who's taken a very unique approach to not only life, but especially the way he views gender. Oftentimes when we think about people as being part of the LGBT spectrum, we think of them being in these fixed categories, like you're straight or you're gay or you're this or you're that, but clearly Eguchi doesn't fit into any of these. For example, he mentions a few times that he wishes he was born a girl, but also he doesn't want to be a woman now. His statements are definitely ambiguous in nature, and trying to pry deeper into them to put him in some sort of category not only won't accomplish anything, it takes away from who he is as a person. Even though you can see his personal feelings through his writing, his life doesn't revolve around that. It's somewhat disheartening seeing how he wants to get back into manga, but can't easily, as his unique storytelling style simply doesn't appeal to the big manga magazines. But it seems like he's happy with the way he's living his life, being pretty active on social media and often posting art. His style will always be iconic, and he seems to enjoy drawing girls the most, with his approach to gender seemingly influencing these drawings. They feel very honest, innocent yet powerful, and not at all perverted, which stands in contrast to his somewhat vulgar sense of humor. And as for Stop Hibari-Kun itself, definitely worth a read and a watch. It probably won't blow you away, but it's an often overlooked part of manga history. It's especially interesting reading it after seeing these interviews, being able to notice how he wrote his emotions and feelings into the pages of Jump. What I've taken away from all of this is that it's good to have an open mind about things in life. I encourage y'all to explore his work, which we'll have links to in the description. Reducing him to just being that guy who wrote the trans manga in the 80s leaves out much about the one and only Hisashi Eguchi. Hope you all enjoyed the video. It was really eye-opening to explore Eguchi's career. If you appreciate the video, give it a like since it really helps out the channel. And if you want to be notified whenever I publish a new video, be sure to subscribe and hit that bell. Take care and get some sleep, will ya? Peace.